The next thing, let's say if you delegate it to Vidi, Gunny, you need another vital component. We don't practice it that much, but I'm hoping to develop a culture. What other things should you have if you're delegating something to Vidi? Over to Gunny.
Milestone and deadline.
Yes. Oh, milestones and deadline. Perfect. So did Vidi get back to you and tell you when the Trello boards would be fixed?
No, no.
You asked
Yeah.
Vidi for when the thing would be fixed.
I'm not asking the specific yet, but really just understand what I mean, and then just doing things on Trello, and then it's just a minute, and it's back again.
Okay, great. So in this particular case, because Vidi activated himself really quickly,
Yeah.
then essentially the service time was so fast that there was no need to ask. But let's say it was something more complex, Gunny. Let's say it's something like, Vidi, can you write a script for me that will go and like pull up websites, copy the emails off of them, and load them into a Excel file where I can then send it out to a bunch of people to Canvas, right? If you're doing that, then what would you then be obligated to do as a delegator?
Yeah, first thing first, I need to understand the bandwidth first, the video bandwidth first. I usually check on the calendar what time that is the blank space, what time is it, and then probably I just ask video or make a reminder on calendar. So okay, video I need this one, so please finish at that time. So yeah.
Very good. What if it's a little bit more sophisticated, Gunny? So we can check the calendar, we can understand Vidi's bandwidth, which is really good. That's really really good as a delegator. We need to know if the person actually has the time to do it. What about milestones and deadline? Who sets the milestones? Who sets the deadline?
Um, Supposed to be me, but I'm not practicing it yet. So
Okay. It's an interesting point, right? So Gunny thinks he should be the one to set the deadline when he delegates. Let's go over to Andre. Andre, who should set the deadline if we're asking somebody a delegate? We're delegating, let's say, a task to somebody, right? Who should be the person setting the deadline and the milestones?
I think from the delegators, sir, from the people that delegate.
Okay, Gunny thinks it's the person delegating, and then Andre thinks it's the person being delegated to. Let's go over to Cynthia. Cynthia, what are your thoughts?
Okay, I think the same, sir. I think the one who should set the deadline is the one who gives the task or the delegation.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Okay, same as Andre then, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm going to offer my opinion on this one, right? I think this is actually more of a negotiation process. Ah, very good. There you go. There you go, Gadi. Um, I believe it's a negotiation process because you both have certain expectations and it needs to be negotiated. It can be all up to the person being delegated because let's say, yeah, I can get it done, but it will take like, 4 months. Then the person who's delegating says, by the time 4 months, I won't need it anymore. Yes, exactly. Brainstorming, Kiki. Yes. So not just brainstorming per se, because brainstorming is just generating ideas, but there needs to be some sort of negotiation where you eventually find a mutually satisfactory solution, right? And that's what we call negotiation. So let's say Gunny needs this tool, right? Because he wants to run a marketing campaign, because he's got to deliver on his SLA of 2 partnerships a month, and he's mid-funnel. So let's say Vidi comes back to him and says, I checked my bandwidth, Gunny, and the latest I can get this done is probably in October. And then Gunny will be like, okay, that really messes up my plans then, right? He needs to then ask, okay, all right, let's see, Vidi, is there a more simple version, or maybe there's a way that we can make this easier, or maybe we can create like say a proof of concept that you can show that this works, and that way I can kind of rely on maybe a manual method up until I get this method, and then I can tell my team that this won't be ready until this time, right? So then the expectations are not just what the delegator, but also with the person being delegated to what this is. So it should be a negotiation and a discussion process ideally. And you should both walk away with some new agreement on what needs to be delegated, how it can be delegated. Ideally, use the Socratic method, right? So you can ask, hey, all right, when is the deadline for this? If it's a short thing, like a task, like what Vidi did, he can probably say, normally can get this fixed within about 2 or 3 hours. Great. Okay, one milestone. But if it's more complex, it's more like a project, then you're going to have to like sit down and break this chunk by chunk up with somebody. You're probably going to have to sit down and say, all right, Cynthia, you want to do this PR chapter thing. All right, what do you imagine, what does success look like? And Cynthia says, well, success will look like when we get our first big PR event. Okay, Cynthia, what do you imagine that would look like? Maybe it's like we go on TED, right? We give a TED presentation. Great. Okay. Do you believe that there's other options that might also work? Yeah, maybe we get like to speak at Tech in Asia or whatever, all these different venues, or she comes up with a few different ways. So I go, okay, all right, let's work ourselves back then. What do you imagine is the milestone that is before the TED conference? Oh, we probably need to organize like a few other events because we know that TED won't be the only opportunity. Okay, great. So how many other opportunities would you be in pursuit of? Maybe like 5 or 6. Okay, great. All right, what would need to happen before that? We probably would need to do some outreach. Okay, all right. So that sounds like you have 2 milestones, outreach, and then narrow down to a group of people that might host us, and then the TED Talk or whatever talk that we'll see. And she goes like, yeah, that's probably it. Great. So how much time do you estimate it will take in the first phase, and how much time would you take in the second phase? And Cynthia says, I don't know. I've never done this before. So then, okay, all right, Cynthia, go to leadership class and learn how to do this, right? And then after you do that, come back. That becomes an earlier milestone. Maybe that's a milestone before the first milestone. So then we take it one milestone at a time. We need to discuss because we need to see actually what the other person is capable of thinking that they're able to do. And we need to kind of build it from both ends. Part of it is building from the success, the final result, back to the beginning again. And part of it is taking the first step to get onto that journey. So I believe this whole process of delegation is actually quite art as well. You're going to need to use the Socratic method. You're going to need to understand like how to negotiate, how to sort of visualize what the success looks like. And both parties need to understand what happens. Okay, why is this so important? Most of the time when I hear about, like, let's say people's pivot cards, because I've been listening a lot to different pivots and different discussions, most people report something like this. Today I collaborated with Gani, and we were doing this thing, and this is what happened, right? Okay, or today, this thing happened, and we thought this would be a good plan, and we got 2 people together to think about it, and I talked to this person. Okay, that doesn't really tell us anything as a group about our own expectations, right? Like, if I'm expected to deliver a result by a certain date, you have told me nothing about whether or not I'm going to be able to do my job. What it should sound like is more like this. I have 3 more milestones before I reach the final result, of which I'm planning to deliver by August 31st, right? At the current progress, I'm already on the 2nd milestone, and I estimate that I should need another 10 days before delivery, which will bring me about, let's say 5 days over the estimated delivery time. Is that okay with everybody? And then we will go, no, that's not okay. Hey, look, I need to deliver this to this other person by this time. You need to figure out a way to get that delivered faster, right? Or such and such. Or no, that's fine. Okay, this particular case we can wait. So we can set the expectations. So meetings should proceed a little bit more like that when we delegate, right? We can understand how many more steps left in the delegees, the person who's been delegated until the end goal, and what do they estimate the time of completion and the quality of completion will look like. That's the most important things. Not reporting the activity, not reporting who you talk to, not reporting that you're involving this, or you're using this tool, or you're doing this. that's good to know, but it doesn't really help anybody else set any expectations, right? In an objective way. Okay, is that part clear now about delegating and then communicating what has been delegated? Okay, let's go over to Kiki. Kiki, does that make sense?
Yes, sir. It does make sense though. Um I personally think that in a delegation process, negotiation is something that we need to do because yeah, in the end, it's we both the delegator and the one that we delegated to is involved in that project. So
Okay, great. Kiki, if it makes sense, I'll do some practice with you on this particular case. Let's talk about Kiki's project with 2 universities, and I'll walk this process through, okay? So Kiki's doing this on behalf of HR, so that's kind of like delegating it. So the first thing I'll ask Kiki is, all right, Kiki, currently, what is your vision? What does success look like for a successful partnership with SMU and UNPAD?
I'm sorry, sir, I lost you in the last sentence.
What do you want to achieve? What is your vision of success?
Um, I always set at least I met this list of expectation, and I gotta say that at least I need to achieve one or two among all of these expectations that I already set it before. For
Okay.
for example, I expect that okay, the goals of this partnership is yes, of course we have the same understanding in terms of what is it we want to deliver the knowledge to the talent that they have, right? And also another goals is, for example, internship publication, or webinar or MOU, long term partnership or long term communication is part of my expectation.
Okay.
So yeah, I always set that goal in the very beginning, and during negotiation process, I always for example, if we face some friction, let's say, oh, they want to negotiate some things, and it's what is that, contradicts with what I want, with what we want, Bukit Vista want, and I always ask, why you do such a thing, why you do that, or
Okay.
why you choose that thing, so I have an understanding of their decisions.
Okay. Good. Let's work this one step at a time. We're not in the negotiation part. We're just
Oh
in the
yeah, oh yeah.
right? So okay. So the first step I'm trying to understand if I delegate something with Kiki is I'm trying to understand, do we have the same goals and intentions? So I'm listening to that, and I want to simplify that, Kiki. I heard about all the things that you said, but the end goal is to bring internships to Bukit
Hmm.
Vista,
Yeah.
right? So the learning, the discovery, the knowledge sharing, that's all good. But the end goal is to bring internships to Bukit Vista.
Yeah.
So then let me break down how this would actually happen. What do you see as being the milestones to getting to that goal? What are the necessary steps from step one? How many milestones are there, and what is each milestone?
Hmm. The very first thing is I take sometimes to do research
Okay.
to my partner. And what I mean by research is I need to know their area of expertise, their interest, their power, because it is important though. And at some point, no, at some point, at so many points, I address that in my emails outreach, and
Perfect.
it's that hypothesis is actually good. I mean, it works for me at least until now.
Very good. So you research the partnerships, and it sounds like the next step you do is you do email outreach. Okay.
Yeah.
And what happens after that?
The email outreach, I expect them to get back to me, and when they get back to me, I just forward them to, and to but hello sir, I think you are yeah. Sir, yeah, hello. Mhm.
Wait lagi kok. Ini dia semacam kayak pembicaranya sebenarnya kayak
aku pengen delegate nih.
Yeah.
Ya udah, aku punya deadline sendiri. Orang itu mungkin expertise orang tersebut kan. Mungkin kalau misalnya Kak Gani suruh aku bikin script. Tolong dong bikin scriptnya dulu, payout itu biar bisa auto scroller ya. Mungkin Kak Gani juga nggak tahu kan kira-kira deadline-nya kapan. Cuman dari Kak Gani sendiri memberikan due date sendiri. Kayak kalau aku segini nih due date-nya. Kalau secara teknis gimana? Itu tadi pagi kita ngomongin soal itu habisnya. Jadi ada sistem pengalokasian waktu di professional networking tadi pagi itu di dunia IT, itu namanya story points. Kita ada satu project, kita kasih berapa story supaya kita bisa ngatur bandwidth orang. Oh, Kak Gani sekarang minggu ini udah ada berapa story points? Udah ada 20 story points, berarti udah maksimum. Orang nggak boleh ganggu lagi. Nah, tapi cara ngatur berapa story points itu di fitur itu siapa gitu kan? Orangnya biasanya lebih ngerti, tapi juga ada negosiasi seperti biasa. Aku punya deadline sendiri, Kak Gani punya expertise nih. Seperti inilah content request. Content request kan kita minta content request. Oh, tolong dong konten bikin poster. Tapi ada deadline-nya kan? Dan di content request juga ada note-nya. Please give a deadline that makes sense. Ya nggak sih kalau nggak salah content request. Nah, itu kan sebenarnya kayak rada negosiasi juga kan. Kita punya deadline sendiri, konten juga minta negosiasi, itu one form of simple or basic negotiation in setting a deadline. So the delegatee perhaps has more expertise in the particular task given. They will negotiate regarding the deadline and according to their own bandwidth. Then the delegator will also try to negotiate. Basically, that's it. As simple as that. We're already doing it, but perhaps like we're not doing it equally because it's not formulated. Something like that.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Vinny. I like how this code switching happens. It's like as soon as I disappear, it goes into Bahasa Indonesia. As soon as I appear, it goes back to English. It's pretty funny. Okay, thank you for the interlude. The connection here, it seems to be dropping a few times. Okay, basically, okay, does everyone see what we're doing here? So I'm negotiating with Kiki to figure out what her milestones are, and then the next step would be I would ask Kiki how long would it take for each particular phase, and then I would then figure out, okay, all right, maybe there's some new milestones that we didn't see before, such as this negotiation phase, and that could be a potential friction that we talk about. Kiki, for negotiation, this is in the class for that. You can book a private session with me, and I can tell you everything that you want to know about negotiation. I'm pretty skilled at negotiation.
I believe.
I'm pretty confident that I negotiate well, but negotiation is a whole new topic, right? You can talk years about negotiation. Gani, what resource at Bukit Vista should Kiki look at if she wants to be a skilled negotiator?
Masterclass and about the FBI.
Yeah, the FBI guy, Chris Fox.
Yeah, that guy.
He's an FBI negotiator. Very good class. One of the most applicable master classes I've studied. Great. Let's go into this next topic, which is Andre's topic, right? Which is refining the workflow. And this, I think, is a beautiful topic, actually, because what I've realized is that sometimes the workflow is the project. Meaning, a lot of times I think we approach a workflow with this, we design the workflow once, and then we just keep on executing the workflow. But actually, what I've noticed is that as a product manager, as a leader, the workflow is your project in a way, meaning that your workflow should never, I think, be static. It should be something that is running, but you're always receiving new input and new ideas to make it better. I'll give you an example that we talked about yesterday, right? We were talking about, let me see if I can find it. This one is pretty cool. So this is actually really, really fundamental to the company. Kiki, remember the talk that we were talking about job descriptions?
Would you like to share the screen, sir?
I'm not sharing the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, let me reshare. It's probably got lost during the last connection. Okay, so let me kind of go over here and show you something that I thought was pretty fundamental. Now, most of you guys probably found out about Bukit Vista through a few ways, right? Maybe one, you saw one of our talks at a university, but the other way was probably through a job description. Okay, so a job ad that we put out through LinkedIn or through one of the job boards, and you found it, and that's what brought you here. For a job description, you know how much time we spend really writing a job description? maybe about, if you average it out, maybe it's about maybe it's like 0 hours a week. That's how much time we spend on writing a job description. So let's say we wrote a job description, it took up maybe about 3 or 4 hours back, maybe 3-4 years ago, right? And we wrote that job description 3 hours 4 years ago, and it hasn't changed since then. It's been the same. So when you divide 3 hours by 3 years, it almost goes to zero, right? There's almost no effort that we put into this job description. But then you think about the job description and how fundamental it is to everything here. It's fundamental to bring the right people to work at Bukit Vista. It's fundamental to setting the right expectations. It's fundamental to career growth. So this thing, maybe we should not spend 0 hours a week on. Maybe we need to budget a little bit of time every week just to look at it and revise it. This is the concept of running something as a service rather than build it once and let it run. So this is where I want to go with this, right? So RNI and Kiki are all working on redeveloping the job descriptions at the company, right? But it's complicated because it relates to the SLAs, and then it relates to ZPD, and it relates to leadership. It relates to a lot of different things. It's not as simple as it sounds, right? Just write down the job description and hire people. No, it's kind of like the employee satisfaction survey, right? What you create through that becomes part of like what happens later. You harvest the seed that you plant. So what I want to show you is this. This is something that we're exploring this week. So we realized the great part of setting up SLAs is that it starts creating all the right questions, right? And it creates the question of, if you want the service, you need people. Well, what kind of people do you need? What kind of time will they spend? What skills should they have? What kind of attributes do they have? Should they delegate up or should they delegate down? So we took a look at, let's say, HAR, and we started with the SLA. Started with Cynthia. Cynthia is covering a part of the SLA. She's covering the reservation management. Her KPIs are to increase the inquiry conversion, reduce the time to response, get the payment report on bigger, and deal with overbookings, right? So there's a certain SLA that we want for those type of services. But then we start looking at this thing. We start looking at what skills is Cynthia actually involved in, right? So this is a workflow, right? So we need to start budgeting and prioritizing and being very clear what is involved in this workflow. If we're going to create a dish, we should start asking what kind of ingredients are necessary for this dish. If we're going to create a service, then we need to ask what kind of skills are necessary for this service. So we started putting together a list of skills that we thought are vital. Communication, persuasion, negotiation, being able to respond in a timely, fast way, having complete knowledge about the area, really about the guest experience, but in terms of product and area, and be able to coordinate with the community so that we can communicate. So it's mostly a communication job, right? And a persuasion job too as well. But there's probably going to be more things that we didn't think of yet, right, Cynthia? There's always going to be things that like, oh my God, I'm using this skill. I didn't realize that. So then what we need to have then is some sort of running as a service idea, that the workflow itself is something that is a project that will always continuously need new feedback, that will need new definition to refine it. Let's say next week Cynthia sits down and she looks and she goes, you know what, Jing? Guys, there's actually more skills involved. And I go, Cynthia, really? Yeah, I'm actually using presentation skills, right? And that's necessary because that's important. Or I'm using mentoring skills to teach new people how to do this. So we go, you're right, Cynthia, that is probably necessary. So we should add this on to the job description again, okay? We need to ask ourselves also, what are the attributes that are necessary? So when skills don't do it anymore and we're crossing over to new territory, what attributes do we need to look for the people who work in this particular role? They need to be detail-oriented because details matter. They need to never settle. They need to work towards a completion of the deal, towards some sort of conclusion. They need to be the hero sometimes and go out and really save a guest trip. And they should not assume they should use data to support the things that they tell our guests, so that expectations are in the right phase. Now, we know Cynthia, we know her capability, and we know that she can probably delegate this down at some point. If we bring in new people, let's say an intern, Cynthia can probably delegate this down. This is in her core ZPD. She's been doing it for years. She's been able to affect the SLA, so we know Cynthia has the ability to do it. So she can delegate this down to somebody else. And this is essentially what the workflow looks like. Okay. So this is a document that we keep and we refer to constantly, Andre. We don't just make this one time and we forget about it. We come maybe back to this every week and we ask ourselves during the scrum, have we actually identified all the skills necessary? Can this actually be delegated? Have we practiced delegating this? And then that becomes part of what I would say is your workflow as a project. All right. Andre, what do you think about that?
I think that's perfect about this because now we have some kind of data to actually see what kind of ZPDs from every each member based on what attribute skill that we need on this particular services.
Excellent. And this is another thing about ZPD. Let's ask this question. It's a fundamental question. Who should determine the ZPD? The project leader or the delegate? Let's go over to Andre. What do you think?
Determine the CPD, the project leader, sir.
Okay. Rizal, would you agree or disagree with Andre?
Agree, sir.
Okay. What about Cynthia? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I will agree with Andre, sir.
Okay. Very good. Vidi, what do you think?
Sorry, sir. By means delegate, you mean the delegator or the delegatee?
Right. Sorry. Like, let's say the delegator. Should the delegator or the delegatee determine the ZPD?
Oh, the delegator. Perhaps.
Okay. Okay, great. I think we all agree on that, right? If you're the delegator, and that was a mistake I made, right? I asked people, determine your own ZPD. If you're the delegator, you can see more layers of the ZPD, right? So if you're receiving a task, you don't know if you can do it. So you might overestimate yourself. So it's up to the delegator to look at the core attributes. The easiest way to measure ZPD, everyone, is to look at the input-output ratio, okay? You don't need to actually ask somebody, hey, are you good at doing this? Let's just look at the input-output ratio. If you have a high output to input ratio, then you're probably good at what you're doing, right? Like, if you get a lot of bookings from inquiries, the same number of inquiries, you're probably better at doing this job. Am I right? Like, okay, let's say Cynthia gets 20 bookings out of 100 inquiries. Let's say Jing gets only 10 bookings out of 100 inquiries. Then you can probably say that Cynthia is probably twice as good as Jing on this particular skill set. You don't even need to, like, Jing, are you good at this? And Jing says, yes, I'm so good at this. I'm so confident. Well, your numbers don't show. Jing, are you good at negotiation, right? Well, let's see, right? Let's see how many deals did you approach and how many deals did you successfully negotiate? That tells it all. So this is really cool, I think, because this pretty much brings up to this idea of checking the bandwidth and checking the skill. Checking the bandwidth and checking the ZPD, I guess, let's just use ZPD because it's sometimes more than skill, of the person you're delegating to. You can check it pretty easily. Look at the CV, look at the success ratio, and that will tell you pretty much what you need to know. Okay? All right. This is why we're sitting here in a leadership discussion, because this allows us to then understand the people that we lead better and allow us to delegate better, which is one of our core things that we need to fix at this company. And it will probably be where more discussions will happen. Less discussions on, did I do a good job chairing? More discussions on, did I do a good job delegating? Yeah. And once we have that, then I think we're really ready to grow. Once we have good delegators, good leaders, then we can really absorb a lot of new people into the team. And then you can start offloading the things that really bog you down. And you can start working on the more creative parts of a project instead of the parts of the project that, let's say, are, that can be delegated to somebody else. Give them the opportunity to get that experience. Wax on, wax off, right? To the new mentee. Okay. That's pretty much it. Hopefully I covered most of what everybody wanted to talk about today. We got 1 minute, but that's pretty much it. Quick feedback. Let me just go to one person for feedback about this session. Let's go over to Cynthia. Cynthia, do you have any feedback about today's session?
Yes, sir. I think the feedback for today's session is I'm not sure it's because of the internet connection, so I think we can't do this maximal. But for result, I'm not sure about the result topic has already what is that discussed or not. That's from maybe we can choose what the topic that it prioritize. So yeah,
Okay.
it will be good.
Let me conclude sort of like and draw a circle around everything that we talked about. The first thing is if you're just getting started on something like outreach, then activity matters, right? Because activity is what generates experience, and experience is what generates self-guidance and autonomy. So the very first thing is just remember, wax on, wax off. Don't get too stuck on thinking about understanding too much. Just do the activity. So that's one. Activity first if you're at the beginning of a ZPD curve. Next is really understanding delegation, the steps to delegation, the negotiation process to delegation, and the correct expectations for how to delegate correctly. So classify the skills that are necessary, identify the person having those skills, check, and then measure ZPD to see if you have the correct person, place, and timing for this delegation event to occur. Negotiate milestones and deadlines. And that's it. And that's essentially the takeaway. Okay? All right. Hopefully that works and that can be good. And I'll see everybody at the all hands. Okay? Bye bye, everyone. See ya.